Was ancient Israel a special nation for God's purposes? Of course. Was it a great privilege to be a part of the nation of Israel as his plan of redemption unfolded in its midst? Yes. Do these things mean that Jews are inherently better or more important to God than other people? Absolutely not. Despite all the Lord's special work among them and the excellent instruction he gave among them, the Messiah came to a nation of Israelites who had overall not learned the lessons they should have learned. One particular lesson which Israel had not learned is in regard to respect of persons. Jesus frequently rebuked them for this in the Gospels. Such a rebuke actually directly resulted in him almost being killed by the inhabitants of his hometown, Nazareth. See Luke chapter 4, verses 16 to 30. They were angry at Jesus for rebuking their pride, related to their belief that they were more important to God than Gentiles because of their Jewish heritage. Jesus simply pointed out, right from the Jewish scriptures, the Old Testament, how there were times when the Lord chose to help Gentiles and overlooked Jews. Jesus also rebuked the mentality of Jewish supremacy by the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. He emphasized to a Mosaic lawyer, something which the lawyer should have already known from God's law, that Gentiles are just as much a Jew's neighbor, whom he is obligated to help and love as himself. It is no wonder that wicked Jewish teachers such as Moses Maimonides and many others have taught the superiority of the Jew to the Gentile and applied the text in the Jewish scriptures about loving one's neighbor as oneself as having relevance only to other Jews. It is seen in Genesis chapter 23 how Abraham did not consider himself entitled to any land in Canaan, even though the Lord already promised the land to his seed. Abraham saw himself as a servant to those outside of his ethnic kin, and considered them as people whom he was obligated to regard with dignity and deal justly with. He therefore paid the inhabitants of Canaan for a field to bury his deceased wife in, even after they tried to give him the field for free. This demonstrates that no matter who you are, and no matter what God has allegedly or actually promised you, there is never a good excuse to steal. The very concept of Zionism and its modern experiment stem from not getting these lessons. Failure to get these lessons and other transgressions against the Lord are actually why Christ rejecting Jews have been cut off from the promises to Abraham. It was established by precedent afterwards in Genesis chapter 38, verses 6 to 10, by the Lord's killing of Ur and Onan, that being a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, does absolutely nothing to spare one who does wickedly in his eyes from his wrath and condemnation. The Lord told the Israelites that the land was not theirs unconditionally in Leviticus chapter 18, verses 24 to 28, and several other places in the law of Moses. When he deputized Israel under Joshua to execute judgment upon the Canaanites and take their land, it was only for that particular occasion, as the completion of a long saga of him showing much patience to the exceedingly wicked Canaanites. He even purified Israel much before and during this conquest, even killing off virtually an entire generation of Israelites in the wilderness, and further killing tens of thousands of other Israelites in judgment as part of this purification process. The goal was always for God's righteous ways to prevail and for his worship to be established in righteousness among Israel. See especially Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 1 to 10 here. Blessing an allegedly inherently special group of people was never the goal, nor part of the process. Such a people never existed, since God is not a partial respecter of persons. Jesus' public ministry was focused on the Jewish people due to how the Jews had been being prepared to be a light to the entire world. They had to be visited and instructed by him first, for the intended benefit of everyone. And because Israel as a nation rejected its Messiah, whose coming marked their last chance to repent, the Lord took away his worship from national Israel and took the land which he had given to them to testify that his worship was no longer intertwined with the nation. These things are proven by Matthew chapter 21, verses 33 to 46, and they were accomplished by Jerusalem and the Jewish temple's destruction in AD 70 by the Romans, whom the Lord deputized in a less direct way, yet still sent all the same. This was simply fulfilling the curses in the law of Moses that the Lord guaranteed he would bring on the nation of Israel for its rebellion against him. We then read the following in Matthew chapter 22, verses 1 to 7. These verses are dealing with how the gospel of Christ initially came to Jews. The verses immediately after these speak of the gospel afterwards being preached among the Gentiles. And Jesus answered and spoke unto them again by parables, and said, The kingdom of heaven is like unto a certain king, which made a marriage for his son, and sent forth his servants to call them that were bidden to the wedding, and they would not come. Again he sent forth other servants, saying, Tell them which are bidden, Behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fatlings are killed, and all things are ready. Come unto the marriage. But they made light of it, and went their ways, one to his farm, another to his merchandise. And the remnant took his servants, and entreated them spitefully, and slew them. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, and he sent forth his armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city.